Greetings and salutations. My name is OJ as always, and welcome back to another episode of the Overwatchathon, a series of videos where I go over every single character in, well, Overwatch. I'll be covering their lore and personality, their gameplay and abilities, as well as their design and cosmetics. With all of that preamble done and dusted, our object of obsession for today is the cowgirl herself, Ashe. Now, as I always do in every single one of these videos thus far, I'd like to start by talking about Ashe's backstory, lore, history, etc, etc. But before I do, I need to, how do I put this? A disclaimer? Ashe has a shit ton of lore. I did not know this until I, booted up the wiki to see what I had to read out for you all today. And yeah, no, Ashe actually has so much lore. It just keeps, you just keep scrolling and it just keeps going and keeps going over and over. Like, the only characters who even come close to having as much as she does, backstory wise, and the amount that is written, is like Cassidy or Reaper. Like, the other characters it's funny because she has lore equal in size to characters who have been in Overwatch since day one. So, I don't know. I'm going to try and shorten down certain segments and trying to summarize here and where I can, but for the most part I'll try and keep it obviously as close and as accurate as possible as I can. But with all of that said, her backstory starts as such. Elizabeth Caledonia Ashe grew up in Texas at the Lead Rose Manor, a large estate located outside the town of Bellaray. Born into a wealthy family who came from old money, Ashe grew up surrounded by privilege. Her parents were highly sought-after business consultants and coaches for powerful CEOs across the world. Her parents paid little attention to her growing up, mostly leaving her in the care of the family's Omnic butler, Bob. They did, though, ensure that Ashe had every opportunity to succeed. Bob was at Ashe's side for as long as she could remember. Her parents would often travel out of Texas, but never took her with them. Her parents would often host many parties at their manor, trying to curry favour from influential persons from Bellaray. Ashe kept to the fringes of these events, resenting when her parents dragged her forward for a few minutes of small talk. Due to the absence of her parents in her life, she had a contentious childhood, getting into trouble at the academy where she attended school, getting into fights, and as well as shooting bottles on the family estate with her slingshot. She found the academy soul-sucking and was at odds with the headmaster of it. Her misdemeanors included trying to convince the academy's resident hacker to change all of her grades to A's, and closing the school for decontamination after showing off with her slingshot in the science lab. She was a lonely girl, and spent a lot of her time talking to Bob. Bob would even make her favourite cake on her birthday, and while it was part of his programming, Ashe appreciated the gesture and looked forward to it every single year. Said loneliness was only worsened due to her status as heiress to Arbalist Arms, a weapons-dealing corporation owned by her mother and father. It is also worth noting that in her time as a teen/young adult, her misdemeanors led to her being temporarily incarcerated, but every single time, her parents' money was enough to bail her out. Skipping forward a few years, Ashe was 13 when the Omnic crisis began. On the first day of the conflict, her parents were away, again, and she angrily refused the food that Bob had made for her, lashing out at the Omnic due to her loneliness. She yelled at Bob to leave her alone, and he walked off. At first she thought nothing about it, confident that Bob would return with more food, but as afternoon turned to dusk, and dusk turned to darkness, Ashe realised that Bob wasn't coming back. Despite her searches, she could find no trace of Bob, and she had feared that he too had left her. Ashe and her family went through the Omnic crisis relatively unscathed. As the years passed, Ashe believed that she'd never see Bob again, and was surprised at how much she'd missed him. The Omnic crisis, of course, lasted for 2 years, and 2 years after Bob's disappearance, he returned to Lead Rose. Ashe rushed out of the house to greet him, yet she stopped when she noticed that he was different. Not only was his exterior riddled with damage suffered in the war, but his very nature seemed different. He was sentient, and also different in ways that Ashe couldn't quite grasp. However, she still hugged him, and slowly, Bob embraced her. Of course, this is due to the fact that, as some of you may know, that during the Omnic crisis, every single Omnic on the planet was under the control of Anubis, which led obviously to the war in question, and through the sacrifice of Aurora, all of them gained sentience. So, obviously the damage is due to the fact, and probably the reason why Bob left in the first place, is due to Anubis at that moment in time mind controlling him per se. Skipping forward to when she was 17, Ashe's condition at school had become worse. An arbalist factory had shut down, leading to a number of her classmates' parents losing their jobs. Casual avoidance of the heiress morphed into active dislike, leading to a number of fights at the school. 3 months before her 18th birthday, Ashe was set to graduate. However, despite her parents' promises, they weren't present, as they'd left to deal with another business merger, and had simply left her a note that they hadn't even bothered to sign. Their absence was not new, but it still hurt her deeply, since they seemed genuinely invested in her graduation, if only to show off to the Bellaray that their daughter could be more than a troublemaker. Fuming, Ashe walked to school alone, distracting Bob in order to do so. As she did so, she was confronted by 2 fellow classmates whose parents had lost their jobs when the factory was shut down. Already frustrated, Ashe rose to the bait and a fight broke out. She held her own initially, but one of them drew a knife, and she quickly realized how serious things had become. Nevertheless, she managed to disarm them and take the knife herself, which was when, with inconvenient timing, officers from the Bellaray Police Department arrived, finding a knife in her hands and 2 bloodied boys both lying on the ground below her. She was brought in for questioning, and the police didn't accept her claim that she'd acted in self-defense. Fed up with her constant law-breaking, she was put in a cell. She was underage and her parents were overseas, so they couldn't bail her out this time. Though during this time in her cell block, she found a companion, namely Cole Cassidy, going by the fake moniker of Jesse McCree at the time, though I will be calling him Cassidy for the rest of this video. While she was wary at first, she began to open up as they discussed about firearms. Ashe preferred rifles, and Cass preferred revolvers. Ashe found herself envying him, because while Cass was a drifter with nary a penny to his name, he clearly had the freedom to make his own decisions, freedom that she wishes she could have. The reverie was quickly cut short, however, as she was let out of her cell, as her parents had bailed her out. Again. She bid Cass a quick goodbye and headed to the station where Bob was waiting for her in one of the family cars. Ashe wasn't given much time to reflect on recent events, as once inside the car, Ashe's parents contacted her. They weren't interested in listening to her side of the story, and instead showed her an article from a newspaper listing her as being arrested for armed assault, with the article's picture framing her in a way that made it look like she was the aggressor against the 2 boys that had attacked her. While Ashe had felt some genuine remorse in letting her parents down, she realized what this was about. Not so much about her and getting arrested, but rather her being in the news and embarrassing her parents. To add insult to injury, her parents laid out what was going to happen. In 3 months' time, Ashe would turn 18, and when that happened, she would be cut off from her family and its finances. Until then, she could live in Lead Rose and would be given a small allowance, but absolutely nothing more. Upon arriving home, Ashe did try to alleviate her anger by shooting a few of the antiques inside of the Lead Rose, but said revenge was short-lived and did little to alleviate her anguish. She considered selling the goods at Lead Rose, but the market for such luxury items was limited, and 3 months wasn't enough time to arrange a sale. However, she had access to arbalist goods that could be sold on the black market more readily. However, even with her parents' credentials at her disposal, it wouldn't be as simple as ordering the goods for herself. No, she needed to steal them, and to do that, she needed a partner. She arrived at an Ace Valentine megafarm where Cassidy had said he worked at, arriving just in time to find him being given the boot. She took him back to the Lead Rose and led him to a hill by the estate, where she handed him a revolver. He proved that he was a good shot as he said he was, and Ashe laid out her situation, and her plan to spend the next 3 months fleecing Arbalest for all she could, before leaving with enough money to go wherever and do whatever she wanted. All she needed was some help, in exchange for a cut of the profits. Cassidy agreed, negotiating his cut to 20%, unaware that Ashe would have gone as high as 30%. The 2 of them teamed up to raid an Arbalest base soon after. Ashe had access to the schematics and they entered a shed outside of the facility proper, which in fact led to an underground tunnel. The 2 of them attempted to steal things using a tablet and stolen codes to use the warehouse drones to pick up crates of Seraphim rifles, armament for which they could use to continue robbing Arbalest. However, the plan went awry when an explosive failsafe kicked in and caused the crates to explode as they had gone outside of their storage location proximity. Drones were deployed to detect the perpetrators in question, however both of them managed to hide, as well as Bob managed to hide, and they also managed to escape. Back at the Lead Rose, Ashe altered the facility's logs to have it be reported that a retrieval drone's programming had gone awry, taking the rifles down the wrong tunnel by accident, causing the explosion, and after which security drones had pursued a pair of trespassers completely unrelated to the incident. They had finished the job, but all that she and Cass had to show for it was a pair of rifles. Cass considered backing out, but Ashe was undeterred, reasoning that they needed a hacker and someone familiar with munitions. Ashe gave Cass the opportunity to take one of the rifles and sell it, but warned him that it would only give him a few months' worth of earnings. But what would 10 rifles bring him? If he walked away now, he would be missing out on the opportunity of a lifetime. Cassidy relented, and for demolitions suggested Julian, a fellow farmhand who had experience with demolitions. Ashe agreed, and in her search for a hacker, found someone called Frankie via a custom web search, but there was no way to contact her, at least not directly. She got to work on that while Cass set up a meeting with Julian at Cutthroat Trouts, a seedy hangout located outside of Bellaray. Bob took both Ashe and Cassidy to the hangout. They entered it and met Julian, after which Frankie showed up. Ashe laid out her plan to carry out a series of heists over the next 3 months. Frankie was suspicious as to why Elizabeth Ashe, she had already worked out a client's identity, would need any sort of money. Truth was, she'd already put it together from the newspaper article, but was still skeptical given the limited equipment available to Ashe. Julian, however, was far more enthusiastic and headed off into the crowd to arrange something. Frankie eventually agreed to help Ashe, at which point Julian returned with a smile on his face, telling Ashe that he'd made a wager. If one of them won against Desba on the Trout's hovercycle track, she'd give them 4 hovercycles. If they lost, however, Desba would get Bob. Ashe was of course enraged. Ashe did go to leave, but it was quickly pointed out that Desba would win Bob via right of forfeit, and the people around here really cared about honouring wagers. With no other choices, Ashe took part in the race, giving herself the name of Calamity as a cover-up. She did manage to win the race, however it wasn't without significant injury and the wreckage of a bike that she had been lent for the race. And with that win, the group now had themselves 4 hovercycles that were delivered to them. After treating her newfound team to a victory meal at the Trout, Ashe led them back to an old barn that lay on the edge of the Lead Rose grounds. Ashe planned to use it as their base of operations, seeing as it was far from any prying eyes. Ashe also announced that she had plans for her next heist. In 3 days' time, an automated Arbalest transport convoy would be passing through, transporting plans to a factory. As the convoy was only transporting plans, it wouldn't be expecting any trouble, which is why it had no protection bar drones. She planned to hit the convoy before it got too close to Bellaray. To prepare for the heist, Ashe took the team to purchase ammunition and other goods. However, when they went to leave the place where they had bought such things, they were confronted by the Diamondbacks, led by Benito Sanchez Bez. Bad blood lingered between the Diamondbacks and Frankie, given that she used to work for them. Furthermore, Ashe discovered that the news of her win at the Trout as Calamity had spread, and once again she used said name to cover her real identity. Thankfully though, the Diamondbacks left without any sort of incident. A few days later, Ashe and her gang made their move against the Arbalest shipment. For the most part, the plan went without any sort of hiccups, and they managed to secure the plans for a H-29 scope. Later, Frankie sold said plans, and the gang received their first payday, with Ashe confirming that Arbalest had failed to identify the bikers who had attacked a convoy. The gang celebrated their victory, though during the celebration, Ashe became aware of the rift that existed between her and the others, given how Frankie and Julian had both suffered during the Omnic crisis, and Cassidy, while mute about his past, clearly hadn't had an easy life. They discussed their plans as to what they would want to do with the money once the 3-month window was up, and Ashe realised that she didn't really have a plan beyond her 18th birthday. Even after a night, she still remained haunted by the question. With her funds, she could travel anywhere, even to Numbani, where Bob would be welcome. But even so, something was holding her back. Over the next 2 months, Ashe and her gang carried out nearly a dozen flawless heists, mostly against Arbalest, but also a few other companies, in order to obscure the fact that Arbalest was their main target. Over these months, Ashe noticed that the mood of her gang had improved, though despite Cassidy's various suggestions, she refused to give it a name, reasoning that they wouldn't be operating together for much longer. Things went awry, however, at the Hopper, where they met with Liu in what was meant to be a simple exchange. However, Liu had double-crossed them, and the gang found themselves surrounded by the Diamondbacks. This was Diamondback territory, and Ashe's gang had gotten too greedy, so they were going to cease all activity or else. Well, there was a lot of holes where people could be buried in the desert. Ashe had no intention of backing down, but outnumbered and outgunned, she knew there was no way they could fight their way out of the situation. Even when Julian was decked, she held McCree back, believing that they had an agreement. Marco led the Diamondbacks away, at which point Ashe revealed to her gang that they weren't going to stop their activities, much to the shock of Frankie. However, as Ashe pointed out, their deadline was approaching, and that they could fit in a few more well-paying jobs, namely a big score that she'd been planning for quite some time. However, said score wasn't as big as she thought it would be, as the gang carried out a heist on a Arbalest train shipment carrying a weapon known only as the Siren. However, despite some issues during the heist, they escaped, and upon opening the crate of weapons, known as the Siren, they found only standard issue rifles. Ashe realized that she had made a mistake. Skipping ahead to Ashe's 18th birthday, she found that turning 18 didn't change anything for her emotionally. She was still frustrated over the failed Siren heist, though Cassidy pointed out that they still had more money than they'd ever had because of their heists, barring Ashe herself. Cassidy gave her a birthday gift, a keychain with her name emblazoned on it for the key to her refurbished hovercycle. Ashe, deeply moved, commented that it was the nicest thing anyone had ever given to her. Cassidy also took her back to the Lead Rose, where she found a surprise party for her. Cassidy told her that dozens of people attending still thought that she was Calamity, and that they were simply gatecrashing. As fun as the event was, it came to head as Ashe was confronted by the Diamondbacks, with Marco calling her by her real name. Since she'd refused to stop the heists, he was going to end them for her. Small standoff ensued, but Ashe pointed to Bob, daring Marco to make a move. Although annoyed, Marco stated that they weren't here for a fight, only that Ashe's fun was over, and that they'd got everything they needed, and that he wanted her to know that he was the one who ended it. With that, he left. Concerned, Ashe talked to Frankie and Julian before flaming bottles were lobbed into the mansion. In the chaos, Ashe realized that Cassidy had disappeared, realizing moments later, in the light of Marco's claiming that they'd got what they needed, that the Diamondbacks had kidnapped Cassidy. Police sirens rang out, and Ashe told Frankie and Julian to hide, before being confronted by her furious parents along with the sheriff. Her parents were aghast not only at what had happened to Lead Rose, but her mother revealed that they'd discovered that Ashe herself was responsible for the heists over the last few months. Furthermore, her parents claimed that they weren't going to really disown her, that they just wanted to teach her a lesson. Ashe wasn't sure if she believed them or not, but decided that it didn't matter. She wasn't the complacent daughter that her parents wanted her to be, and she never would be. Reaching the end of her rope, Ashe's own mother ordered the sheriff to arrest her. She was 18 and therefore responsible for her own actions, and thus she was taken into custody. Ashe was aghast, knowing that the Diamondbacks had Cassidy, but she refused to make amends with her parents as the police took her in. Inside of her cell, she had much time to reflect. It was clear that Marco was the one who told the police and her parents about the party. But why take Cassidy? And how had Marco even found out that who she was in the first place? After an hour of yelling, the sheriff came to her cell, where she pointed out that there wasn't actually any proof of any of the crimes that she had committed. But the sheriff said that it didn't matter. With her parents' resources, they'd be able to get any charge to stick. Ashe changed tactics, saying that she had to get out of here and find Cassidy. The court had set her bail after all, and if she could use the money from her account, the sheriff, however, was having none of it. But Ashe pointed out that the sheriff had detested her parents for ages. If he let her pay bail, nothing would make them angrier, and given that she was 18 and therefore an adult, they had no legal course to stop her. Of course, she couldn't promise she'd turn up for a court hearing, but... An hour later, Ashe was on bail. It took the entirety of the gang's shared account to cover the cost, but she was free, such as it was. In a sense, she was back to being destitute, but it didn't matter. She had a new family now. Exiting the police station, she found Bob waiting for her. Hugging him, she told him to contact Frankie and Julian to meet her at the barn outside Lead Rose. They were going to save Cassidy. Just before meeting the two of them in the barn, Ashe did sneak inside the Lead Rose to retrieve some items, including her Viper rifle. She met with both Frankie and Julian in the barn, who were aghast that Ashe had spent almost the entire gang's account on her bail. Frankie told Ashe that the Diamondbacks would have taken Cassidy to their hideout at the Deadlock Gorge. However, there was little chance of saving Cassidy and getting out alive. Ashe persisted, but neither Julian nor Frankie were on board with a suicide mission. Ashe accused them of abandoning Cassidy, but Frankie accused her in turn of caring about nothing but money. She'd used their account without their permission, and from the beginning, Ashe had always been the one with the least to lose. Ashe, who was fuming at this point, turned to Julian, who said that he'd stick with her. Along with Bob, they stocked up on all of the weapons that they could find and set off for the Deadlock Gorge. Both Ashe and Julian arrived at the gorge. However, their plans quickly went awry when she was accosted by Marco and other Diamondbacks, incapacitating her. Upon waking up, she found herself inside of their lair, with a grinning Marco in front of her. He revealed that they knew she was coming, and Julian was in fact responsible for being a mole. He revealed that he'd got himself into debt due to his activities at the Cutthroat Trout, and the Diamondbacks had bailed him out in exchange for him informing them about Ashe, and that Cassidy had been kidnapped after he'd refused to take part. Marco revealed his plan to ransom Ashe to her parents. Ashe pointed out that they'd disowned her, but Marco wasn't convinced. They had a reputation to maintain, and if it came to light that their daughter had been kidnapped, their reputations demanded that they pay for her release. In the desperate moment, Ashe was given a lifeline as one of Frankie's microdrones latched onto her, allowing Frankie to whisper to Ashe via the radio. The hacker simulated the sounds of a police siren and speaker, making it seem that the police had surrounded the hideout. The Diamondbacks scattered, but Ashe managed to trip Julian up, at which point Bob and Frankie arrived on the scene. They made up, to an extent, of their earlier altercation and agreed to escape, but not before finding Cassidy. Julian said that he knew where he was. They headed through the tunnels of the lair, eventually finding Cassidy and attempting to head out. However, in the warehouse section of the lair, they were ambushed by the Diamondbacks as well as Marco. A gunfight erupted and both Ashe and Cassidy were hit. Outnumbered and outgunned, Ashe offered herself to Marco in exchange for letting the others go free. Both parties agreed, but Ashe attacked Julian and stole the detonator to the dynamite. If she detonated it, the entire lair would be buried. Ashe played her hand, offering the Diamondbacks a place in her own gang, that they'd be treated with respect and be given equal shares. Bez was the first to cross the floor, and the majority of the Diamondbacks followed him. Marco and Julian were tied up, put into a shipping crate, and Ashe took command of her new gang. She ordered Bez to contact Cassidy and Bob, while ordering the others to do an inventory. Ashe sent the shipping crate containing the two men to the sheriff as a way of settling accounts. Over the following period, more and more gangs began looking to join Ashe's new gang, the Deadlock Rebels, a name decided by her and Cassidy, named in reference to their lair at Deadlock Gorge, taken over from the Diamondbacks, of course. They declared their new family inside the Panorama Diner before heading off for another heist. This entire experience had opened Ashe's eyes to her new calling. Not only had she found something she enjoyed, she found something she was good at. As a criminal, the idea of making a name for herself appealed to her, and make a name she did. She did more and more extravagant and bigger heists, and the Deadlock gang rose to fame. Ashe found herself excelling as their leader. Not only was she good at organizing said heists and being a career criminal, but years of watching her parents coach and run their businesses had imparted her lessons on how to run a criminal enterprise. The rise of her gang did put her at odds with other criminal organizations. However, she managed to use her business tactics to cause them all to group together, to all work with one another, bring an order to them, to say the least. Her proposal that the gangs could work together, and her principles were keep your word, don't work with the law, respect each other's territory, and always punish betrayal. And with no longer having to focus her energies on squabbles with the other gangs, she wrote her name across the American Southwest with a string of audacious heists and operations that has placed her at the top of the most wanted lists and cemented her legacy as an outlaw legend. During this time, however, Cassidy ended up being captured in an Overwatch sting operation, and to her surprise, joined Overwatch. Following the news, Ashe kept a picture of Cassidy on the dartboard of her hideout. Years after the same man's departure, Ashe and her gang planned a heist of a hypertrain crossing above Route 66, having received an anonymous tip that it was full of military ordnance. They destroyed the bridge, causing the train to plummet onto the road, giving them easy access to the cargo. Whilst loading the goods up, however, Cassidy emerged from the dust. Cass quickly confirmed that he was the one who'd sent the tip about the train, knowing that she couldn't resist it, and all he wanted in return was a specific crate, telling Ashe that she could have absolutely everything else. However, after looking inside, she refused to give it to him, and a gunfight ensued. With some clever thinking, Cass emerged the victor, not only securing the crate he was after, but also taking Ashe's hovercycle and driving off, leaving her in the dust. The encounter with Cass left a pall over Ashe. Over the next few months, nothing seemed to go right. When Null Sector attacked Paris, things got even worse for the gang. As spooked by Overwatch's return, in less than 24 hours, half of the Deadlock gang's clients had frozen their shipments. Now, for the most part, this is actually where Ashe's story ends. There is a comic, which I cannot find the source of, which has her engage in some issues with Null Sector in a casino in Las Vegas where they attack. She's holed up in the casino. Nothing really happens to her character-wise. There's no character development, really. There's not much for Bob either. So, like, there's literally, I'm not kidding, if I talked about this segment would go on for like another 15 minutes. There's a lot here. But to me, none of it, like, expands upon her story, per se. Though, interestingly, we do find out through her story that removing a subjugator, or trying to hack one, will actually kill the Omnic. That was only a theory proposed in the PvE missions, but now that is actually confirmed through this Ashe story, which is, obviously very interesting. But besides that, the thing doesn't really do much for Ashe. If you want to read it for yourself, it is on the Overwatch wiki, so you can, read it for yourself, blah, blah, blah. But to kind of summarize my thoughts about Ashe as best as I can, I like her a lot, but there is a lot here, and I don't know how to talk about it in, like, a quick way. She has so much backstory, so much story. Like, she's someone that obviously I can sympathize with a lot. Not on a personal level. Is it sympathy or empathy? You know what I mean. Like, I kind of feel bad for her considering her upbringing. I can understand why someone like her would turn to crime. When you live in a, stuffy, upper-class, rich family, a lot of those who don't who want to break free, it's kind of a trope of, like, the rich girl doing crime or the rich man doing crime. Funny enough, her and Lifeweaver kind of have a few similarities between the two of them, both coming from very wealthy families and becoming sort of outlaws, vigilantes, criminals in a way on their own behalf. And funny enough, the both of them do actually have interactions that are weirdly sweet because the both of them share some similarities in terms of upbringing. But Ashe is just, she has so much, it's hard for me to, like, gather my thoughts on it. I like it a lot. She's a character that is connected in all of these different ways to all of these different things and concepts that make her really interesting. She's obviously connected to the Omnic Crisis through Bob specifically. Of course, she didn't really get affected personally by the Omnic Crisis, but the departure of Bob and then his eventual return, now sentient, is obviously a big thing for her. It's a thing that kind of changes how their dynamic works. And I think it is sweet that she still kind of, like, loves Bob as if he was, like, I don't know, her father or something along those lines. Like, he's kind of like a guardian parental figure to her. And I think that's really sweet. Like, outside of, when she lashed out when she was a child, she never seems to have any problems with him. I know obviously her alt line makes it sound like she does, but she doesn't. She loves him, and I think that's very, very sweet. And of course, she has an immense amount of history with Cassidy. I'm sure when I soon get to his video, most of it will just be me regurgitating Ashe's backstory, because the both of them are very, very closely connected. And I think it's kind of like a dual thing where by introducing Ashe and giving her all this backstory with Cassidy, it helps Cassidy, because before this, he didn't really have much backstory outside of his inclusion into Blackwatch and his involvement in Retribution. So she's kind of like a double win, because it's a new character who has all of this backstory and all of this cool stuff. But she also expands the backstory of a character that already exists and people already like a lot. So yeah, I do think them as a pairing is really cool. I like that the both of them kind of have like, what would you call it? Like unresolved emotions between the two of them. It does actually say that they never dated. However, there is clearly some form of like romantic tension between the two of them, even if neither of them would ever admit it. At least to me, right? Ashe can say that she hates Cassidy's guts all she wants, but to my knowledge, Cassidy was the first ever friend she ever made, proper, outside of Bob, who she basically considers a family member. So there is clearly something between the two of them that goes beyond, you know, just them being friends in a way. Do you kind of get what I mean? Like, I don't, is it Cass that has, I think Cass like notices the picture that she has of the two of them. I don't know where it is. I think it's on her bike in the cinematic, and he kind of like smiles at it. It's like, I know, despite them two kind of breaking apart and Ashe or Cass going against all of the rules that she's set for all of these gangs, she still kind of has some sort of connection between the two of them, if you get what I mean. But yeah, Ashe has so much lore. This is kind of the thing where I don't really have many thoughts on it because there's so much here and it's all quite well written. I like it a lot. I like the sort of issues that she has growing up in a family that's so rich. Her and Lifeweaver have many similarities, funny enough. I don't know if I already mentioned that at some point, but her and Lifeweaver do have a lot of similarities, both coming from stuffy upper class families and all of that sort of stuff. And the both of them even have interactions with one another. So yeah, lore-wise, I kind of just have to say, or like pose a question to you, the viewer, as what do you think of her lore? What do you think of her connections, etc.? Because I'm interested, because I like it across the board, but it's hard to like nail down exactly what I like, because there's so much here. But moving from her lore, I'll discuss her personality a little bit. Ashe, due to the way she is and her upbringing, is a relatively prickly woman. She can be very snarky, very rude, but that is kind of the nature of someone who is not only a criminal, but also someone who is a cowgirl by all definitions. So yeah, she can be quite snarky, can be quite rude to a lot of the cast. However, she can be quite sweet when she wants to be. Like, there's the interaction between her and Juno, where Juno makes like a cowboy reference, and she, you know, she kind of like plays along with it, and it's quite sweet. I wouldn't be surprised if maybe like Ashe kind of saw a bit of herself in Juno in some way, shape, or form. I don't know specifically what, but you kind of get what I mean. She also has quite a funny interaction with Ilari, where Ashe asks if she can look at Ilari's rifle. Ilari replies that she doesn't think she's the type to give it back. And the way Ashe just goes, yeah, I would always give it back. I would never betray you. Like, she's really fun. She's a very fun character, very sassy, and admittedly, people have kind of, I saw it in the comments of my Kiriko video, where some people said that Ashe is also a character who can be quite like bratty, quite rude. But the difference between the two of them, like Kiriko and Ashe, is Ashe is literally a criminal. She needs to have this front of being rude and kind of being a bit intimidating, because that's how she keeps her place as the head of the Deadlock gang and the head of, you know, all of these other gangs who kind of listen to her. So yeah, I do like her personally. I've always liked her. I think she's one of the best additions that Overwatch 1 ever gave us. And with this very, 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 very long-winded section, I think this is the longest lore section yet, I would like to now move on to talking about her gameplay and abilities. Please do keep in mind, for this section, I use OBS to record my audio and gameplay simultaneously, so if I sound a little bit weird in the transition, I do apologise in advance. But with all of that said, we will now finally move on to talking about her gameplay and her abilities. Right, so here we are in the ever so lovely and ever so helpful training range to talk about Ashe's gameplay. Now, unlike my series, going through all of the supports, I want to say the DPS ones should be shorter, because there's not as much complexity to most of these characters. But anyways, I feel like I should say that first before, and then watch the segment will still be like 30 minutes long or some bullshit. Anyways, first things first, let's talk about her gun, which is easily the most important part of her kit, that being the Viper. Now, this is a rifle with two different variations, kind of, per se. There is obviously the semi-automatic hip fire, as well as the take aim, where you are able to obviously aim down sights and slow your fire rate to increase the damage and accuracy of your shots. But the Viper, as it is, without aiming down sights, does 35 damage at base and has a max fall off down to 10.5 damage. The min-max fall off range is 20 to 40 meters. The reload times is 0.5 seconds for the start up and 0.25 seconds per bullet, as she has to reload each individual bullet. And if you were to empty the magazine, it would take you 3.5 seconds to refill the whole thing. And the min-max spread, so it kind of has like a bit of, what's it called, bloom, kinda? It's barely noticeable, but it does have a tiny bit of bloom, and it's 0 to 2 degrees. And I would like to point out, it is of course a hit scan weapon, as well as it does double damage on critical shots. Yeah, critical, because some guns, funny enough, do, I think it's called like lesser critical, where it does 1.5 times damage on headshots, but Ashe is one of the characters that gets the double damage. Now, of course, to show what the gun looks like, it is, of course, a rifle, and if you just press your left click, you can spam your sort of hipfire shots, and you'll notice that there is a bit of bloom. You'll also notice that the reload time is very long. Now, in my own personal experience, because of course these are personal videos, they are my opinion pieces per se on a lot of these characters, I don't really find myself using the hipfire almost ever. I know that sounds weird, but outside of the instance where the enemy is in front of me and they are actually on a single digit of health, and it's just easier for me to just kind of spam my shots their way instead of, you know, aiming down sights and trying to take a shot, I don't really use the hipfire. Like, even if people jump me, I actually do think it might be a little bit more valuable to try and take a few aim down sight shots due to the aim down sights doing, you know, generally more damage. But the idea with the hipfire, of course, is for when people jump you. Say there is a Genji, say there is a Winston, say there is generally any big target that is on top of you, or any target that is trying to jump you, you aim in their general direction and you just dump your mag. Just like dump your mag as quick as you can. I would, of course, want to point out the intricacies of our weapon, that being the reload. Of course, as you know, or as you can see, you do kind of take a long while to reload. So, this is a character who almost incentivizes you to reload as much as possible. I know it's kind of a, what would you call it, like a tendency or a kind of quirk that many people in first-person shooter games kind of just reload whenever they can. And Ashe is a character that actually incentivizes that. Because if you say shoot like a few scope down shots and, you know, the target runs around the corner and you can't see them anymore, there is literally no reason that you should not just reload those bullets that you just shot. Like, whenever you are not in active combat, you should be reloading. And the good thing about Ashe's weapon is that when you're reloading, you can kind of go back to shooting, even if you are like kind of, and there is a bit of a delay, right? There's like a 0.5 second delay before you can start shooting again, but they still allow you to shoot, even if you've only reloaded like 3 bullets into the mag, which is a good thing. But yeah, the hipfire is, you know, it's fine. It's good for when people are jumping you. A good example, funny enough, is like Tracer. You are going to struggle to hit a, like, you know, scope shot unless your aim is really good, which, as I've said many a times before in a previous video, I'm a self-proclaimed person that cannot aim. So, there are instances where if a Tracer is jumping you, it would probably be easier to just hipfire. And if you get lucky, or, you know, your aim is actually good, you could, you know, hit a few headshots and she's out and down for the count. But yeah, like, don't underestimate the damage of the hipfire, though. Just, my favorite punching bag in the game, Roadhog. Say Roadhog is trying to kind of, you know, shove himself in your face. You can just, like, this isn't bad damage. Not at all. I mean, damn, he's literally on like 20% of his health left. Like, that's good. That's good damage. But again, that is me, like, you know, hitting all of my headshots. Still doesn't mind. It's still not bad, though, if you know, hit all of your body shots, right? Now, we move on to probably the most important part of our kit, weirdly, and that's the take aim, where you obviously zoom in and you increase your damage and accuracy, but you slow your rate of fire. The damage jumps from 35 per shot to 75 per shot, and the fall off damage jumps to 22.5 at the max fall off distance. However, this is a buff with the recent season. If I remember rightly, I don't know if I can check. Yeah, I can't check patch notes. Either way, Ashe got buffed with mid-season. Originally, her min-max fall-off range was 30 to 50 meters. Now it is 40 to 60 meters. So that 22.5 damage only actually comes into play at that max distance of 60 meters, which, you know, I mean, if we just jump on over to this area over here, it doesn't even like go this far. Like this point here, this 40 meters is where you start to lose your damage. So any further back, so say, I don't know, what would be a good estimate? This is probably like 50 meters, right? Like right here, this is where you start to lose your damage. And then once you get to, I don't know, like right over here, then you are just like, you know, you're only doing 20 damage. But look how far 40 meters is. This, you get to do 75 damage per body shot from this sort of distance. This is not bad at all. No, actually, this is very good. Very good. Her min-max fall-off stuff is really, really good. Fall-off isn't really even an issue for her, weirdly. I know, obviously, beyond the distance of 60 meters, like, but seriously, who are you fighting at 60 meters? Like, realistically, like, who are you fighting from, like, a distance this far away? Widow? Widow is, like, a counter to Ashe. Widow is one of the few characters that can kind of go, like, toe-to-toe, kind of duel Ashe in a sense. But, still, most enemies, you will probably end up be fighting at, like, this 30-meter range. So even in the situation where you are, like, really far back, by all accounts, this is really far back, you're still doing 75 per shot, which is very good. And remember, this is not only hit scan, but it has double critical damage. So a headshot is 150. 150 is a lot. It's very good. Ashe is a very strong character. She's arguably... actually, hold on. Let me think about it before I say anything more. I just want to look at the hit scans. Would I say that Ashe is potentially the strongest hit scan? Yeah, probably. Maybe. Kind of. Do you consider Sojourn a hit scan because of the rail cannon? If you do, I would say she is a hit scan because of, you know, most of her damage coming from the rail gun. Yeah, I would probably say it's kind of like 50-50 between Ashe and Sojourn. Cass is there too, but Cass suffers from what I like to call design creep, where because he is a Overwatch 1 character, release Overwatch 1 character, he kind of doesn't have the tools and extra bits and tad bits that kind of make some of these newer characters stronger. Like, the best example, funny enough, is between the two of them. Like Ashe and Cass, comparing Cass's kit of gun, spam, roll, flashbang to, you know, her with her rifle, both having, you know, close up. They're kind of similar. Her design features aren't that much more complex, but I don't know, I've always felt like there's a sign of design creep between the two of them in a weird way. I don't know. Maybe I'm going off track. Either way, Ashe is probably the best hit scan in the game. Maybe second, maybe third. She's in the top 3, at least in my opinion. And that is because of take aim and how much, like, kind of damage it can deal. Like, think. This is a Roadhog. This is a big, chunky tank. Of course, most tanks have quite head big, you know what I meant. Big words are really difficult. Big head hitboxes. There we go. And as a result, this is good damage, right? This is me shooting it probably as quick as I can. Like she just does really good damage. Like, let's just shoot Cass for shits and giggles. Being able to two-shot, like, like every DPS with 2 headshots. The only one who wouldn't be killed in 2 headshots are, like, Bastion. Is that it? I think Bastion's the only one that doesn't die to 2 headshots. Yeah, because he has armor and 350 health. Like, everyone else here dies to 2 hit shots, right? Like, okay, Torbjorn doesn't barely, because Torbjorn has a bit of armor. But look at how much health Torbjorn's on. He's literally, you know, punchable. But yeah, the Viper is a very strong weapon. Like, by all accounts, a very strong weapon. You know, like, good for close-up. Well, it's not good for close-up stuff. You do want to play at, like, that mid-range, long-range distance, especially with now the buff to her fall-off range. You really want to play it, like, further back. She is susceptible to being diving, as most hit scans are, but she does have ways and means around that through, you know, her hip fire being relatively okay. Of course, as I said, I do think her aim down sights is 20 times more superior, but yeah, she does have ways and means around it, right? But before I talk about that means, I just want to say the Viper as a gun is very, very strong. It's where all of your damage is going to come from. Because she is a hit scan, she does very well into flying characters. Maybe in better hands. Again, I can't aim. I'm sure you saw some of the background B-roll footage and how I just straight up miss my shots a lot of the time against many flying characters. I swear there was a clip with like a Mercy flying about and I just missed my shots like 50 times. I cannot. As I said, I'm not particularly good at aiming. I have my moments. Where I have a good kill now and then, but otherwise I'm not great. But yeah, the Viper is a very, very strong weapon. A good Ashe will obliterate you. And like every other DPS in the game, she is susceptible or helped out by, Mercy. A damage boosted Ashe. How much is that? Was that a 30% damage boost if I remember rightly? Yeah, 30% on top of 150 headshots. There are instances where Ashe can one-shot people with just a single headshot. I had an instance where on one of my games on console, I got nano boosted. I actually just one-shotted, I think it was an Echo. I just shot her in the head and she instantly died. But from full health, mind you. So, yeah. Ashe is a demon. She does a lot of damage with her Viper. But she also has some forms of DPS utility through her coach gun and her dynamite. The first of which being her coach gun, where you use a shotgun. I know they call it a coach gun. It's like a double barrel shotgun, where you blast enemies in front of you and knock yourself backwards. It does 90 damage per volley. I presume that's kind of like a projectile related thing. So okay, no, I see what it means. There's 15 shots per volley. So if you hit all 15 shots, which by the way, you would have to be really, really close to do that, you will deal 90 damage. Most of the time you don't deal the 90 damage. It's just kind of, like it's a bit of like, you can use it as a finishing tool in some situations, but I don't use it like that a lot. Either way, it knocks back yourself 18 meters per second and enemies by 20 meters per second. And it has a spread of 20 degrees. It's a very simple ability, really. You pull out your shotgun and you blast it and you knock yourself back, as well as any enemy in front of you backwards. This, as I kind of alluded to earlier, is her tool to be used against divers. So say a Genji jumps on top of you, say he dashed, more specifically say a Genji dashed into you. If you turn around, just shotgun him, you can just push him back. Gets people off of you, keeps them away from you. You can use it, of course, to get environmental kills, as I just showed there. But this, besides, getting people off you, etc., it does also have many other utilities. Such as, for example, say you are, say you're missing your shots, maybe you're struggling, maybe you're frustrated, you shoot them. You can use it as a finishing tool. It's a reasonable thing to do a lot of the time. And of course, as it knocks yourself back, it can also be used as a movement tool for yourself. So say, for example, in any other situation, I wouldn't be able to get up there. I look down at the ground, and I'm able to coach gun myself from that point there, all the way up here. It allows Ashe to get up onto high ground, which is somewhere where she can excel from, due to her nature as a hit scan DPS. You're able to get into kind of quirky positions, kind of get into weird places that most other DPSs can't get into. And you can also use it for, obviously, horizontal movement. Say you know that someone is chasing you, you can of course use it and kind of project yourself forward to get further away from them. It's a very strong ability. It is on a 10-second cooldown, however, and during that cooldown you are quite vulnerable to being dove still. But yeah, it is a strong ability. You're able to get yourself around, get up, down, low, everywhere, push yourself around, push enemies around, get them off of you, use it as a finishing tool. Though, of course, you do have to keep in mind how and when you're using it. Like, for example, I myself have a few times went to use coach gun to get out of the kind of, what's it called? Is it called pile drive? Yeah, the pile drive of a wrecking ball. But I don't, I use it too early, and as a result, I still get knocked up by the pile drive. You kind of have to, use, a good example again, Genji, he's the, what would you call it? The blueprint for a diver, almost. You have to be aware of when he's dashed. So say he dashes onto you, and then you use your coach gun, woohoo, you got him off of you. That's a win. However, if he manages to jump you, and you coach gun him, and he hasn't used his dash, he can just dash back and ignore the coach gun's effects. Or some characters can just ignore it full stop. Like Venture just does not give a shit. Venture could get coach gunned mid-drill dash, and they're still going to be dashing into you. Tracer as well doesn't really give a shit. She can get knocked back, but she can just blink forward and get right back in your face. So yeah, Ashe can be susceptible to divers, even with her coach gun up, because some of them have ways and means of kind of staying on top of her per se. I would argue that Hazard is also a very good example of this, because not only is Hazard a tank, so he is, less susceptible to knockback, but he has ways and means of kind of trapping you or getting back on top of you through his leap, or, he can just block it. And if I remember rightly, when he has his block up, he doesn't really get knocked back a lot, if I remember rightly. I don't remember. Maybe, I think because, maybe, I don't know, Hazard is a good counter though. Yeah, Hazard's like a really good dive tank. He's very strong right now. I do like his gameplay. I feel like I'll throw that out there. But yeah, Coach Gun, kind of as and when you kind of use it, or can use it. Then you have Dynamite, which is honestly probably the most fun part of her kit, really. You throw an explosive that detonates after a short delay, or immediately when shot. It has many, many effects. It has it's obviously an AoE attack. Because it is, a damage over time effect, it is armor piercing, so it ignores the damage resistance from armor. And it applies the burning status effect, so because it sets them on fire, and that is a cleansable status effect, so Kiriko can get rid of it, of course. However, due to it being the specific definition of burning, fun fact, Ashe can, of course, blow up a dynamite, set people on fire, and Mauna can benefit from it because he will obviously get his guaranteed crits on any enemy that is, burning. You can also damage yourself, as they quite clearly point out. But to just show, of course, what this looks like, you press E, you throw dynamite on the floor, and after a short delay, it will explode, and it will set, obviously, any enemies in the explosion radius on fire, and they'll take the damage over time. And if I remember, how much damage does it deal over time? So it does initial damage of 50 or 20. I have no, min-max radius, right? That's why. It has fall off for some reason. The dynamite has fall off. It does 50 damage explosion to 20. It has 100. It does 100 damage over time. So the max damage you can get from it is 150, which is not bad at all. It lasts for 5 seconds. The explosion has a 2-second delay, and the min-max radius is 1.5 to 5 meters. Now, of course, to show the other part of it, you can throw it and shoot it and cause it to explode immediately. This is kind of where, what would you call it? Because obviously, when it comes to DPSs, or like when it came to discussing healers, there are tricks and, little fun mechanics you can play around with when it comes to kind of playing as them. There's tips and tricks I can give to kind of assist people in playing these characters more efficiently. But honestly, I can't really with Ashe, or most of the DPS lineup, really. Like, I obviously gave tips and tricks on how to use Coach Gun, but really, at the end of the day, when it comes to, like, her gun, which is where most of her damage comes from, I can just tell you to point and shoot. It's kind of shoot people, really. And this is where I talk about Dynamite, or this is the bit where what I'm talking about is that Dynamite does have a few kind of tricks to it. And it is obviously the simple trick of, shooting it in the air and making it detonate immediately. What's the word I'm looking for? There's not like much like hidden tech to playing Ashe. The deepest it goes is, shooting dynamite or managing to hit your dynamites in the air. Like, say there's a Reinhardt in front of you with a shield and you throw the dynamite over his head. If you miss the shot, you miss out on damage on a character who otherwise isn't able to be damaged because obviously he has a shield up and you can't shoot him. But that's the thing, right? These characters, most of the DPSs, don't have much kind of mechanics to them. They don't have much like tricks and techs and tips. And their skill floor, like the skill floor for Ashe, is very low because it is just shoot the person, right? Shoot people. Use Coach Gun to get away from people. Blow up dynamite. But then her skill ceiling is high, but not in an interesting way, if that makes sense. The skill ceiling is, how well can you aim? Really, that is her skill ceiling. Can you aim well? Can you hit headshots consistently? Woo! Now you're playing as one of the best DPSs in the game, and you're going to do some insane damage numbers. Can you hit your dynamites consistently out of the air? You can? Woo! Awesome. But then again, that still dumbs it down. That still comes to, can you aim well? The most kind of skill that is in Ashe's kit is the Coach Gun, because you need to know when and where you are using it, how you are using it, whether it's on cooldown or not. You have to actually think about that cooldown. Dynamite, you can kind of just throw this out every time you have it. There's no like, oh, should I not use dynamite? The answer is almost always yes. When you see like those diagrams of like questions and answers and eventual conclusions. Do you have dynamite? Yes. Use it. Do you not? Is dynamite on cooldown? Wait for it. Then use it. Like, there's no reason to ever not use it. Unless, and funny enough, you can actually bait out like Kiriko Suzu's with dynamite, which can open the doors to other more negative effects. So say, for example, you bait out Kiriko's dynamite or bait out Kiriko Suzu with dynamite, that can open up the door to an Ana anti, or maybe a Junker Queen ult. Funny enough, these two are a weirdly good pairing. Just because of that sole fact, mind you. But yeah, dynamite is kind of, it's a good ability. Very solid ability. It's kind of self-explanatory though. You just shoot it, make people burn. It's extra DPS on top of your already good DPS if you hit your shots. Then we have the ult. Bob, my beloved. You deploy Bob, he charges forward and knocks enemies into the air, and then attacks with his arm cannons. Bob is kind of an interesting case where he is a fully separate character that you can deploy to fight alongside you. He has 1,150 health, which is a lot, and that's the highest health total of any character in the game, I think. Even with like certain abilities in mind. Maybe not. Maybe like some tanks with Wu Yang's bubble on them have more health, but still. Bob has the highest base health of anyone in the game. He does 17 damage per shot with his guns. He does 120 if he hits his charge. The charge lasts for 4 seconds before he stops, and he fires for 10 seconds. So in total, he is up for 14 seconds, which, is a long time. Now, the thing is, with Bob, he is very susceptible to any sort of like, what do you call it? What word am I looking for? CC, crowd control. He can be hacked, he can be stunned, he can be slept. He does actually have the tank passive, however, so he isn't affected for as long by said status effects. But he's an interesting little thing, right? So, of course, if you press Q and you are looking, he will deploy directly in front of where you are looking. There is a bit of a gap, though, from where you deploy. So, say, for example, I stand here at the 10-meter mark and I press Q. Bob actually comes out, like, sort of 5 meters in front of you. And, of course, he will be deployed, and he will stand there, and he will shoot, and he will obviously do his charge and knock everyone up. And for some reason, there's a glitch right now where Bob gets a kill. It creates a very loud explosion sound for some reason. Bob is kind of one of the strongest ults in the game. I don't know, he's a very finicky thing though, because there are many instances where you'll throw Bob kind of at a target. However, he will, he will do that. There are many cases where Bob will run off the map for shits and giggles. Maybe the person you throw him at, you kind of miss. So say like, I know there's let's say, who's a good example? I don't know, there's just any DPS kind of shimmying side to side, and you try to predict their movements, you throw Bob, and then they move away from him, and he just runs off into a corner of the map, and he doesn't do anything, and then he's gone. Like, it's very easy to waste Bob. You can sometimes throw him headfirst into the team, and he will just simply be killed. There are many a times where I have thrown Bob, and he's just kind of like weirdly skidded off surfaces. Like, if I threw him in this direction, there is a chance where he just like runs into this wall and like skids across it, instead of stopping at the wall where I want him to stop. So, yeah. He's a bit finicky, right? But if Bob does go off with no issues whatsoever, he is probably one of the best ults in the game. He is considered as a separate person, like an actual player. So funny enough, you can just throw him on a point and he will contest the point as long as he is standing there. And seeing as he stands there for like 14 seconds, he is actually quite efficient at doing that. Like, there are many a times where I'll just throw Bob out onto the payload to have him contest it. Just so someone is there contesting it whilst, I don't know, maybe the team catches up, or maybe some more people like join, or you know what I mean, right? Bob is a very good ult, a very fun ult, mind you, as well. I do enjoy Bob a lot. And honestly, per some, what would you call it, some teachings from a friend of mine, I almost use Bob as a third cooldown. Like, I just kind of throw him whenever I can, because Bob can just kind of win team fights without much effort. You just have to look at the enemy team, or look at a place where you think he'll be advantageous, and you just throw him. You just chuck him out there, and he'll just do his work. I will give you a small tip. This is a Overwatch recommended tip. I had it pop up when I died once. Bob is very efficient, because it is a true tip, right? Bob is very efficient when kind of deployed at the back line of an enemy team. Like, if you're able to, and you're able to, like, kind of, like, sneak around the enemies and just, like, deploy Bob behind them all, that can cause a lot of issues for the enemy team. Because now they'll be forced to make a decision. Do they turn around and deal with Bob, but expose themselves to attacks from your team? Or do they continue to try and fight your team head on, whilst having Bob kind of gun them down from the back? Because he does do very good damage, mind you. Like, he's no slouch. That 17 damage per shot, that don't sound like too much, but let's pull up, I don't know, what's a good example? Let's pull up with someone like Juno, right? Just put Bob here. This is good damage. This is really good damage. Like, he can obliterate, like, multiple squishy targets without much issue. And, of course, he is also very efficient at just being thrown headfirst into the enemy tank to just knock him up. Just to be disruptive. He's just a disruptive force that forces the team to or the enemy team to like, focus themselves away from your team and onto Bob, unless they want him to be a problem. But yeah, he's very good ult, very strong ult, and Ashe's kit in general is very, very strong. And she's just been strong forever, really. Ever since she came out, she's really strong. She's still strong now. She's still arguably like one of the best DPSs in the game. I saw a few comments on my Vendetta video from a day or two ago, where people obviously pointed out that the rule of hit scans is, everlasting, and Ashe is kind of the face of this fact. She is just everywhere. She's always at like the top of DPS tier lists. Like, even now when we're in the middle of like a meta where there is a lot of very good dive characters, like Tracer's really strong, Venture's really strong, Genji's really strong, Hazard, Hammond, like Ashe still manages to keep up, even when characters that by accounts are her counters are strong. Though, of course, as I mentioned or alluded to, Widowmaker is a weirdly good counter to her, because Widowmaker plays outside of kind of Ashe's min-max fall-off distance. And, of course, Ashe can be one-shot headshotted, kinda, by Widowmaker. So, Ashe can be countered by Widow in most 1v1 scenarios, because Ashe has to land, like, at least 2 shots on Widow to get rid of her, where Widow just has to land that one clean headshot. So, obviously, then again, in that situation, it just comes down to who is the better player, who aims better. But yeah, Ashe is very, very strong, and her perks are pretty good, I will admit. You have Remote Detonator, where you are able to throw dynamite, and if you press E again, it will delay it or detonate it after a 0.5 second delay, which I guess that kind of like removes the skill gap of, shooting your dynamites. I personally can hit most of my dynamites, so I don't really ever use this perk, but if you find yourself struggling, it can be a good learning tool. But I wouldn't say to cling to it, because, well, of course, you do eventually want to just learn how to shoot it. And honestly, I think her second perk, that being Sidewinder, is better, where your coach gun will knock back both yourself and enemies 12% farther. This, of course, allows her to it makes her be able, all of the compliments I had for the coach gun, the movement, getting people off of you, etc., only are enhanced by it knocking you back further. Like, now enemies have to catch up with you and it takes longer to do that. Now you can get to even higher places, you can get out of spawn quicker with, the knockback. I generally just find Sidewinder to be the better perk, per se. We do also have our major perks. The first I'll mention is Airburst, where Dynamite has a 40% increased detonation radius whilst airborne, and it refunds free ammo when thrown. That is nice. The extra free ammo is neat. And fun fact, if you pick the detonation perk, it does still activate the effect of Airburst as long as it is in the air. So those perks do actually have synergy. But you can also, obviously, you're meant to just shoot it. The extra radius is nice. It allows you to set more people on fire, get more DPS out of Dynamite, which, is fine. It's decent. It's alright. However, I do think her second perk, Viper's Sting, is better. Where if you hit 2 consecutive scope shots on a target, you deal 25 extra damage and you reload 2 ammo. This is obviously effective. The thing is, I've mentioned this many times before when I talk about perks. Perks that affect the main weapon or a main form of damage, healing, etc. are always going to be more interesting to me than one attached to a cooldown. Like, Airburst is good and all, but it's attached to Dynamite's 12-second cooldown. Viper's Sting is really good, and it's attached to your take aim shots. Or any, like this... It's just extra DPS for free, really. Like, it's an extra 25 damage, And also, if you're able to hit your shots consistently enough, infinite ammo, as long as you just, shoot people. Also improves their DPS on tanks, funny enough. So say, for example, Roadhog. Now I'm able to kind of whittle away at his health bar, and the extra damage over time is noticeable. And notice that I am still on a full magazine. And considering, you're going to be using the take aim shots basically to do like 80% of the damage you deal, this is just generally a better perk in my eyes. Though, of course, if you are being forced to swap shooting targets, like say, I don't know, you kind of have to go like 1, 2, oh no, there's another person here, oh, wait, back to that person. Maybe the perk isn't that good, but to me, it's more consistent to just, just take out single targets as much. It allows you to just focus in on a target and get rid of them immediately. It's just way quicker than you can. I know extra 25 damage don't sound like too much, but it's extra 25 damage, and it reloads 2 shots, meaning you never really shot any shots to begin with. Exactly. But yeah, Ashe's kit's great. Very, very strong across the board. No qualms with it. I do think she may be a little bit too strong, but it's kind of a case of like, how do you nerf her? Do you decrease her damage? I don't know. She just has like a good kit. Really damn good kit. Good ult, good abilities, really, really strong primary, really solid perks. Like, she's just good. I don't think she'll ever be bad. Like, unless they just made, I don't know, they drop her take aim shots to be like 60 damage or something, or they drop her max fall off, or their min max fall off range to like, oh, the max fall off is 40 meters. Like, yeah, okay, now she'll struggle, but I don't know, it'll be, they'll have to do drastic shit to get rid of her, I think. But yeah, she's strong. I like her a lot. She's very fun to play as you can notice. I have gold weapons on her because I play her enough. Funny enough, I believe she is my, she's my second, well, she's tied for my most played DPS. Obviously, in terms of hero level, she's on the same level as Mei, but in terms of time played, wow, Mei is actually at the top. But look, Ashe is like right there. She's right behind, most of these other characters. When she came out in Overwatch 1, I thought she was like, the best way I can describe her is like being just like a more fun version of Cassidy. You can tell I am still no slouch when it comes to playing Cass. I enjoy him, but Ashe to me is just kind of a more fun version of him, at least in my experience. But of course, that's a personal thing, of course. But yeah, with all of her gameplay, I believe, done and dusted, I think it's very good, as I have mentioned many a times. I would like to now move on to talking about her design and her cosmetics. Now, when it comes to Ashe's base design, I am not really sure how to, kind of describe how I feel about it. I like it. I like Ashe's base design, but I don't think I have too much to say on it. She is a cowgirl. That's kind of all I've really got for you. I will admit, there is one key part of her design that I've always liked, and I really love the fact that she has a red tie on. I love that she has kind of this white buttoned up shirt underneath, the leather jacket and the cowgirl boots and the leather pants, etc. I like that she has this kind of almost upper class white shirt with a red tie on underneath of it all, to show that even despite her obviously portraying herself as a cowgirl, as an outlaw, there is still this kind of shred of a businesswoman in her. There is still kind of a shred of, her upper class lifestyle visible on the way she dresses. I like that bit of a detail. And she obviously stands to contrast Cassidy, who is a very much traditional cowboy with no signs of any sort of what would you call it, upper class lifestyle in any way. You got the poncho, etc., etc. Obviously talk about more his design when we get to him specifically, but the two of them have similarities. I feel like, funny enough, the fact that the tie is red may kind of be sort of a tiny bit of a reference to him in some way, shape or form. Maybe I'm looking too deeply into color combinations again, but still. Ashe as a person outside of her outfit is, a very, very attractive. Is she in her 40s? I think Ashe is 30 or 40 years old or something. She looks damn good for 30 or 40. She looks young. In her release origin trailer, there is no difference between how she looks when she was 17 to when she's, 30, 40 aged. I will admit though, I do obviously have to criticize people for their weird hair colors. I mean, I criticize Juno for having naturally purple hair for some reason. This is natural, by the way, if you didn't know that. This is apparently her natural hair color. In her debut comic, she was a baby and had purple hair. Huh? Literally impossible, by the way. Like, biologically impossible. But Ashe also has something that I don't know if this is biologically impossible, but she does have naturally white hair. Even when she was a child. She also has naturally red eyes, which I also think is very hard to do genetically. But hey, it makes her stand out. The white hair is a lovely look. I love her red eyes as well. She just, I don't know, all I can say is that she is a cowgirl. She's got some interesting design things, but the thing is, I still really love her design. I still think she looks great. Like, what do gay people say again? She slays? That's the one. I don't even want to repeat some of the compliments I've seen gay people give with, like, attractive women before. It's actually gibberish. I love it, though. I do love the gibberish. And of course, I do need to mention my beloved Bob. He is gorgeous. He's a handsome little fella. He is obviously this giant Omnic. I'm not even sure, like, what kind of class of Omnic he is. He's kind of like a unique model. We've never seen anything like Bob's before he showed up and after he showed up. I've never seen anything even like him. Like, why does a butler got arm cannons built into him? Like, he just looks lovely. I love his tiny little hat as well. Like, the fact it's like a little bowler hat is kind of in the way like Ashe's red tie and white button-up shirt is kind of a sign of her rich kind of heritage. I feel like Bob's little bowler hat is also a similar thing. Bowler hats are kind of a upper class look, at least in my eyes. So him wearing that is kind of a sign of what he used to be, as in a butler. But he is also dressed in, you know, a cowboy get-up with his big, massive leather jacket with the fur neck collar. I think this looks awesome, by the way. And the deadlock badge on the back. I know, Bob just looks great. He's a little handsome boy. He's got his mustache as well. He looks great. And Ashe's gun is also very cool looking. I'm kind of a sucker for lever action rifles. And yeah, this is no different. This looks great. It's got like a bit of dirt, a bit of scratches. It's got the deadlock symbol on the side. The black, the gold as well is kind of a signifier of her kind of rich upbringing, because this was obviously stolen from the mansion that she used to live in. So yeah, looks very good. Shotgun. I mean, it's a double barrel shotgun. Again, with the gold symbols though, still neat. And again, even on her dynamite, still the gold there. Sort of signs of her royalty. Royalty? It's not royalty, you know what I mean, upper class. Then we have an Overwatch 2 redesign, and I am on record of not really liking many of the Overwatch 2 redesigns, and Ashe is a weird one, because while I like some aspects of it, I also dislike other aspects of it. I think getting rid of the white shirt and the tie is kind of a mistake, because now she really is just a cowgirl and doesn't have that sort of deeper kind of thing that you can almost like look into. She still has the red on her through the kind of like texturing on her jacket now, and she definitely looks even more cowgirl-esque. But I feel like getting rid of the, you know, the signs of her upbringing per se, the signs of her being, you know, from an upper class family, does kind of hurt her design. It looks nice, like this is still a nice looking design, but now she is just a cowgirl, and I cannot say anything more into it. Like, the most signs of royalty she had, or no, I keep saying royalty, the most signs of richness that she still has on her is maybe like the hooped earrings. But even then, that's such a lesser signifier than, you know, the red tie on a white button-up shirt. I don't know. I feel like the design kind of moved backwards a little bit. But it's like one step forward in making her more cowboy-esque, but you lose that, so it's a step backwards as well. You lose the upper class stuff. Bob hasn't really changed, like really. He's now more jacked, and he's got like some more augments on his shoulders and his chest. Like, he doesn't really look too much different. But yeah, I know Bob's still kind of the same. Yeah, he's still got the exact same silhouette. His outfit's like slightly different, but nothing to really say here. And Bob still kept the hat though. That's the interesting thing. Like, they got rid of Ashe's signifiers of her upper class lifestyle, but they kind of kept Bob's. So I don't know. It's kind of weird. And also, did she replace the rifle? Because this is not even, like, remotely close to being the same rifle. I think they should have just kind of kept the same rifle design, but, like, as they do with many of the Overwatch 2 designs, I feel like they should have just cleaned it up. I do like this rifle look more. However, I don't know. It feels kind of weird for her to ditch the... Like, again, another signifier of her ditching that kind of upper-class lifestyle. I know, obviously, that's what she wants, but I think kind of character design-wise, still keeping those influences is a good thing, because it kind of like helps her have a bit more intrigue to her outside of just being a cowgirl. And yeah, I feel like getting rid of the rifle kind of sucks. You could have just kept the same rifle base, but made it more cowboy-y, if that makes sense. So it's still a signifier of her life as a rich woman, but it's now covered over in her new life, if that makes sense. But I get the idea as well with the new gun, like she's ditched her old lifestyle, this is her new one, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I don't know, her designs are good, they're fine, but I don't know, I feel outside of, digging into the idea that it shows the rich upper class lifestyle, blah, 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 I don't think there's really much to it. Moving on to her cosmetics though, we have her mythic skin, which I am okay with. This is a fine mythic skin. I get the idea. This was released in the kind of knockoff Power Rangers season, and she was meant to be like the evil empress with her giant demonic bodyguard. And I think that's a cool way to, utilize their concept together, like Ashe and Bob, and turn it into something new. As a actual design though, I think it's fine. It's very over designed intentionally, as many like kind of classic Power Rangers, Moomin Rider looks kind of were. I really love Bob's look in this, how he just has like this giant mouth for a stomach with glowing pit to green hell. Like they're both very over designed, but I think it works for the both of them. And it, as a mythic should, it should either take a character's features and enhance them to an extreme degree, or transform them into something completely different. And I think Ashe's one does that well. It's not my favorite, but it's pretty solid. It's nothing like I'm particularly upset about. I don't really have much to say on it. Outside of that, though, Ashe is she's a character who I, of course, as I have many a times, I did it with Kiriko, did it with Juno, did it with Wu Yang, did it with all of these characters who get like a billion skins. She's received a lot, huh? She's very, shall we say, popular when it comes to skin distribution. I don't want to go as far to say she is the mercy of the DPS department, but yeah, she kind of is, really. She's gotten a lot. I think she's probably gotten more skins than most of the lot here. Like, I mean, just think, right? She's gotten multiple Battle Pass legendaries, which, by the way, I really like Intergalactic Smuggler. I feel like I should say this. I just want to point out, I think the skin's really cool. I'm not fond of this, though. I do not like this. But she's also received, why does the Deadlock skin have the Overwatch 2 shop logo? Wasn't this a challenge event in Overwatch 1? Swear it was. I swear, why they got the Overwatch 2 logo? Anyways, she's received she actually received a third legendary from a battle pass as well through Demon Rocker. Again, very, very good skin. She's really damn attractive in this skin. I don't know if it's just me, but hey. But she has received, I want to say multiple collab skins. We had, Faye Valentine from the Cowboy Bebop collab. We had her in the Seraphim collab, which, again, that's another one. And most recently, she got, is it Fubuki from One Punch Man? Yes, I did buy the skin because I really like how Ashe looks. For once, it's Ashe in a outfit that isn't, like trousers and like... Most of her skins are her in either some form of skirt or in pants. This is the first one where she's kind of like wearing a dress almost. So I really like this, and I also very much like the gun. The gun looks absolutely gorgeous. It's meant to be like a fur coat in a form of a gun. You can even see that I've actually got the icon and banner still equipped. I usually just like equip whatever collab I haven't even watched One Punch Man. I just thought this fit looked great on Ashe and called it a day. So yeah, maybe I'm part of the problem. I know this, but yeah, she's received many skins, and I do have to criticize her for that. I don't really like a lot of them are recolors, though. I will admit, like this is a recolor of an Overwatch 2 skin. She got this skin this season, which is it's in the shop still, I believe. Is it? I think it's still in the shop. Yeah, it is. If I just quickly look at the shop. Yeah, it's still in the shop right now. So yeah, she receives a lot of skins, and I do have to criticize her for that, because honestly, a lot of the time when they make a lot of recolors for her, weirdly. Like, recolor here, recolor there, recolor here, there, a recolor of an Overwatch 2 skin. Like, she's got a lot. I feel like we could have maybe, not made like this as a recolor, and put the other in a adventure skin, please. So yeah, I will criticize her. She gets many skins, but again, I've probably mentioned this. Usually, if it's a character I like, usually I don't have that many problems. But I, of course, per my principles, have to call out that she does get a lot of skins. So I do think we should probably distribute these to other characters. But again, we know why she gets a lot. She's not young. She's like 30, 40 something, but she's a young-looking, attractive white woman. Do you need me to say anything more? And she's popular in, comp, because she's very good. So, yeah, it makes sense that she gets a lot of skins. But yeah, with all of that said, this is now the end of the video, and it's probably the most long-winded one yet, maybe? I don't know, I haven't really checked. I swear I saw 30 minutes on the gameplay recording and almost audibly sighed to myself, knowing this will probably be very long. But, hey-ho, it's for a good character, right? I enjoy Ashe, I enjoy her story. There's a lot to it, I will admit, almost overwhelmingly so a lot to it. Her gameplay is very fun, if a bit simple, though, of course, it's very fun nonetheless. And I think her design is good. I just wish they kind of did something more with the Overwatch 2 one. Something about this design just doesn't really do it for me. Something about, I feel like I should mention this as well. She does have a mythic weapon, which I think she's the first character. No, Mercy was the first character. No, Kiriko would have been the first character I talked about that had a mythic weapon. I do own it, as you can see. And yeah, it's pretty good. I like it a lot. I like the flourish where you wiggle the rose. And I think it's cool that it's named after the manor that she used to live in. I think that's a very, cool idea for her mythic. But yeah, Ashe is cool. I like her. She's obviously one of my most played DPSs. Clearly, I like her enough. And with all of that said, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, whether it be a good morning, afternoon, evening, etc. Like, comment, and subscribe if you feel so inclined. And the next video in this series will be on my beloved robot, Bastion.